The crowd didn't hear it at first. They felt it. A deep vibration rolled across the grandstands like distant thunder. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Heads turned. Somewhere behind the pit wall, something mechanical was waking up, something angry. Then it hit. A roar. Not just loud, but violent. It tore through the air, rattling fences, shaking ribs, making grown men step back without knowing why. And in that moment, America realized something had changed. Because this wasn't just another race car. This was something else entirely. And it was about to terrorize the streets. In the early 1960s, America was obsessed with speed. Highways were expanding, gas was cheap, horsepower was a badge of honor. Detroit wasn't just building cars, it was building identities. Chevrolet had dominance, Ford had momentum, and Chrysler was losing, badly. Their cars were solid, reliable, even stylish. But on the racetrack, the place where reputations were forged, they were getting humiliated. NASCAR was everything. Sunday wins turned into Monday sales. And Chrysler's absence from the winner's circle wasn't just embarrassing, it was costing them millions. Inside boardrooms, tension simmered. Executives weren't just worried, they were desperate. Because if Chrysler didn't win, it risked becoming irrelevant. And then, someone made a decision that would change everything. They didn't want to compete anymore. They wanted to dominate. Deep inside Chrysler's engineering divisions, a quiet rebellion began. A small group of engineers was tasked with a nearly impossible mission. Build an engine so powerful, so dominant, that it would crush the competition in one stroke. There was no time for caution, no room for failure, only one goal. What they created wasn't refined, it wasn't elegant, it wasn't even practical. It was raw, massive, unforgiving. They called it the 426 HEMI, and from the moment it fired for the first time, they knew they had crossed a line. Because this engine didn't just produce power, it unleashed it. In 1964, Chrysler showed up to NASCAR with something nobody was prepared for. The competition didn't understand what they were seeing at first. Cars from Dodge and Plymouth weren't just faster, they were untouchable. Lap after lap, they pulled away like the others were standing still. Drivers reported something strange. The throttle felt different. The response was instant, brutal, like the car was trying to outrun itself. And fans, they were mesmerized. But behind the scenes, panic was spreading because Ford and GM realized something terrifying. They couldn't compete, not like this. The 426 HEMI didn't just win races, it dominated them. At Daytona, it was a massacre. Chrysler cars swept the podium. First, second, third. The message was clear. This wasn't competition anymore. This was annihilation. And NASCAR officials were watching closely. Because when one company wins too much, the sport itself starts to suffer. Fans don't want certainty, they want battles. And suddenly, there were none. What happened next wasn't just controversial, it was explosive. NASCAR made a decision that stunned the entire industry. They banned the engine, just like that. No warning, no compromise. The 426 HEMI was out. Officially, it was about fairness. Unofficially, it was about survival. Because if Chrysler kept racing with that engine, it might destroy the competition entirely. And a sport with no competition doesn't last. But Chrysler didn't back down. They couldn't, because by now, something else was happening. The streets were starting to notice. Word spread fast. Stories of unstoppable Mopars began circulating across America. Cars that couldn't be caught. Engines that sounded like war. Teenagers whispered about them. Street racers hunted for them. Dealerships couldn't keep up. Because Chrysler had done something nobody expected. They put the HEMI into street cars. And suddenly, the terror wasn't confined to the racetrack anymore. It was everywhere. Owning a HEMI car wasn't normal, it wasn't safe, it wasn't even logical, it was reckless. Insurance companies noticed first. Premiums skyrocketed. Some refused coverage entirely. Because these cars had a reputation. They were fast, but they were unforgiving. Drivers weren't ready for them, not really. Too much throttle, too soon, and the car would bite hard. Stories began to pile up. Crashes, spins, close calls that ended in twisted metal and shaken nerves. And yet, demand only grew, because danger has a way of becoming irresistible. Police departments started paying attention. High-speed chases became more frequent, more chaotic. Officers reported something unsettling. They couldn't keep up. Standard patrol cars were outmatched. Entire departments had to rethink their fleets just to stand a chance. And still, the HEMI cars kept slipping away. Parents were terrified. Newspapers ran stories warning about supercars invading public roads. Community leaders demanded regulation, because this wasn't just about speed anymore. It was about control, or the lack of it. Inside Chrysler, the mood was complicated. They had created a monster, and it was working. Sales were climbing. The brand had never been hotter. But there was a cost, because every crash, every headline, every lawsuit pointed back to them. And then came the pressure, not from competitors, not from fans, from Washington. The late 1960s brought a shift in America. Safety became a national conversation. New laws were introduced, regulations tightened. Suddenly, raw power wasn't enough. It had to be controlled, measured, justified. And the HEMI? It didn't fit into that world. Behind closed doors, executives faced a harsh reality. Continue pushing the HEMI and risk government intervention, or pull back and lose everything they had built. It wasn't just a business decision, it was survival. Then came the moment that changed everything. Production slowed, then stopped. The beast that had terrorized racetracks and streets alike was gone. But legends don't disappear quietly. They echo. Even after the HEMI vanished from showrooms, its reputation only grew. Stories became myths. Myths became obsession. Car enthusiasts hunted for surviving models. Prices climbed. $5,000 cars became $50,000 collectibles, then $100,000, then more. Because owning a HEMI wasn't about transportation anymore. It was about legacy. But something strange lingered beneath the legend, a question that nobody could quite answer. Was the HEMI too powerful for its time, or was it exactly what America wanted, but couldn't handle? Because the truth is, it didn't just dominate races, it exposed something deeper, a culture obsessed with speed, a market that rewarded excess, a system that only reacted when things went too far. And maybe that's why it still matters today. Because every modern performance car, every horsepower war, every debate about speed limits and safety carries a shadow. The shadow of an engine that once shook America to its core. Even now, decades later, when a restored HEMI fires up, people stop, they listen, they feel it. That same vibration, that same unease, that same thrill. Because deep down, we never really forgot what it did. But here's the part nobody talks about. Some engineers who worked on the original HEMI project later admitted something unsettling. Not publicly, not officially, but quietly, in interviews, in conversations, in fragments of memory. They didn't fully understand what they had created, not at first. The power, the behavior, the way it overwhelmed everything around it, even them. And for a brief moment in history, that lack of control escaped the lab, escaped the racetrack, escaped into the real world. So the question remains, did Chrysler unleash the HEMI on America, or did America demand something so extreme that it forced Chrysler to build it? Because if history tells us anything, it's that machines don't terrorize people on their own. They're invited, and sometimes they're welcomed.